Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ainslee Hooper Chats With. This podcast is by me, Ainslee Hooper, your host. Each week I chat with individuals who all have a lived experience of disability, including myself, but all have our own life stories, life journeys, and are all doing our own thing. So this podcast aims to break down stereotypes that people with disabilities are two-dimensional and highlights many things that we are all doing going on in our life. So now please help me welcome this week's guest, Nikki Hind. Nikki, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Ainslee.
Thank you. So Nikki, can you please introduce yourself and just let everyone know what you do?
I can, yes. I'm Nikki Hind. I'm apparently Australia's first blind fashion designer, and I have a label called Blind Grit, which is built entirely of and around those who live with disability. So all the fabulous, aspirational, fun, creative jobs that sit behind the creation of a fashion label are done by those who live with disability, and I certainly include mental health within that. So the modelling, the photography, the hair, the makeup, the styling, obviously the designing of the garments themselves, the social media, graphic design. There are so many wonderful, aspirational, creative positions that sit behind the what you see when you see a fashion label.
Wow, interesting. So do you mind just explaining just a little bit about your experience with, do you say blindness or vision impairment? How do you word it?
Oh, it's funny because I always feel a little uncomfortable saying Australia's first blind fashion designer.
Okay.
However, it was Vision Australia who declared me as such, and those within the vision impairment community, that's what they say, that's what they call me, that's how they describe themselves, myself, and others within that community, that either you're blind or you're not.
Right.
I always feel a little more comfortable saying I'm Australia's first legally blind fashion designer because I do have a level of vision, as do by far the majority of people who are blind.
Right.
So yeah, I tend to call I use both intermittently. You'll see it written. I'll tend to write I'm Australia's first legally blind fashion designer. But I do, by the same token, although it makes me feel ever so slightly, I guess that imposter syndrome, like, but I do have some level of vision. I embrace what it is too. My vision is not at all what most people would experience as vision. So I'm also more than happy to embrace that. And as I say, that by far the majority of people with vision impairment who are blind have a level of sight, like myself.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I find the whole language thing around disability interesting. Like, because we've all sort of got our own ways of expressing things, and there's this stigma, I guess, out in when you see discussions in the disability spaces, there's stigma out saying, oh, well, you shouldn't use that language, you shouldn't use this language. And yeah, I think it gets people very scared about approaching topics. It's yeah.
I strongly agree with you, Ainslee, and I guess like with any hello doggy, with any social issue, you know, it's nice for people to be coming at it with different strengths and positions and skill sets. And certainly when I communicate about disability in myself and within the disability community, I am very much I don't mind really the language that is used. It's the motivation that that I care about and that I tend to hear. And I guess a perfect example is children. You know, children ask the most wonderful questions that would be labelled dreadfully politically incorrect and offensive if asked by an adult, but it comes from just genuine interest in, oh wow, that's different, and I want to understand it, and this is exactly what I want to understand. Why are you in a wheelchair? Why is your eye like that? Why is it, you know, just blatant, and that is beautiful, that childlike desire to notice, know, and understand is delightful. But of course, it comes from a lovely motivation. Yeah, so I'm somebody who certainly feels that freeing up the ability to use whatever language you like actually enhances the communication around it, enhances understanding around it, and that it's that the much more important focus would be on the motivation that language comes from, not the language in and of itself. And I think people do get very frightened of, oh God, I don't know what to say, because I don't want to offend anybody. Yeah.
See, I'm thinking like, I remember I was at a voting booth, one of the elections, and a little boy came up to me because his mum was at the next booth. And he came up to me, and he was about maybe 3 or 4. And he said to me, excuse me, why are you in a wheelchair? And his mum was horrified. And I just like, to me, the way he said it was just so cute that I had no problem answering him. But it's interesting because like, if an adult came and said that, I would be offended because it's a stranger coming up to me. And in my head, I go, why is that? Like a child can come and do it. But an adult, so if an adult did it, would be inappropriate. But yeah, because
and sorry, Ainslee, you would actually feel that, would you? You would feel that, oh, don't ask it outright like that. And again, you know, I have what I describe as an invisible disability. As in, when I walk down the street, people don't see me and think, oh, look at the legally blind girl, because I don't use a stick, I don't use a dog. I should use a stick.
Right,
I'm a shocker, I don't. And I don't have a doggy yet. But so that's really interesting to me, because I would not be offended. And if ever I tell people down the street that I'm legally blind and they ask something like, oh, you know, I'm never offended. But then again, I have a very different experience to you in that I don't have to deal with every time anybody sees me, the first thing they see is
I think that's what it is. And it's funny because like I've been thinking in my head as we're having this discussion, why is it okay for a little boy to say it and not for an adult? And I think it's because of that. I mean, it probably comes from a bunch of social things that have happened over the years. And like I'm totally fine with like somebody who's had a rapport with me to finally ask that, and that's no problem at all. Like, so but yeah, if it's a stranger just coming up all of a sudden, I'm just like, what? Like, yeah, that kind of thing. So yeah, for me, I've got spina bifida. So I've been in a wheelchair all my life. So with yourself, like has it been a degenerative thing or in your situation?
No. I was actually born legally blind in one eye, but I guess I had enough vision that I certainly didn't pick it up and others didn't pick it up, because I guess I could do the majority of stuff. I certainly wasn't good at reading or sport. I was like, I can't see a ball coming, and balls would hit me in the face and things. But my family, who are quite sporty on the whole, I think just thought, oh, what a dud. This one's crap at sport. And they're also quite prolific readers. So there was that sense of, oh my God, I'm not really very good at sport and reading like the rest of the family. And they were things that were very valued in the family as well. and it was discovered, I don't know if they still do it, but the nurses that would come around to the school and do various checks, and one of the things they would do is the vision check with the board with A up the top, and
yes,
and they covered my right eye, and I could see the board because it was lit up, but that was it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's really no vision at all in my left eye. And then they patched it and had lovely big Coke bottle glasses, and I couldn't see anything. They were trying to strengthen that eye because I was still young, and I couldn't see anything on the board, couldn't see anything in the playground. I walked into a horse once, just smack into the horse, couldn't see it, like I just can't see anything. But then when they gave up that and took the patch off, I guess I was still, because I had quite good vision in the other eye, and it was just how it's what the world had looked like to me since birth anyway. And I was good enough at getting around in the world. So it was kind of pretty much forgotten, really. And then when I was pregnant with my beautiful firstborn, who you met just before we started this interview, Ainslee, who's now 15, I had a stroke.
Right.
And that killed a part of the brain that processes the vision.
Okay.
So it killed 50% of the field of vision in both eyes. Of course, made not much difference to the left one. Doesn't work anyway. But I can now see out of the inside half of my right eye.
Okay.
But of course, I've got no peripheral vision. I don't have speed or depth perception. I can focus, and I can actually focus on detail, but just for a split second. I try and describe it to people as in it's almost like trying to get a hold of something that's in a dream. When you're dreaming and it's like exactly visually what's around you, but then if ever you try and focus in on something, you can't get a hold of it, like holding wet sand. You can't capture it, you can't get a hold of it. So yeah, just kind of negotiate, because I think I still rely very heavily on my vision when negotiating the world, because it's what I have been doing most of my life until a stroke in mid-adulthood. And it's very, very tiring. Sometimes I wish that I would just get better at wearing the dark glasses and resting my eyes, because it's very, very hard for them to cope. And then it's draining on the rest of your body, and, you get headaches and nausea, and it's just outright exhausting. But I guess, it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. I'm very reliant, because I read things rather than using, text to
audio.
I don't even know what the name of it is, and I.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what it is now. Your audio to text to audio thing. I know what you mean.
Yes. I should be using stuff like that. It would be very helpful, but I don't, because it still feels quicker and easier. It's like training a new Nikki. I've spent so much of my learning life doing it one way, and I'm a very visual person. Very visual person, which is very funny for a legally blind girl.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me it was fascinating when I learned that, like, I knew you were in the fashion space, and then I learned about being blind, and I'm very curious about that, because I'm wondering how well, I guess you just adapted to it, but how did you get into that, and where can people see examples of your work? Because it's fascinating.
Well, firstly, people can see examples of my work, and I'll describe it as our work. I might be the one designing the garments, but you'll see all our awesome models and the incredible young man who created our logo, and our social media manager. All their stories are on our website. If you just type in blind grit, I'm will be the first thing that comes up. Happily, I seem to have created a term that hasn't been used, isn't a movie. So it's fabulous. Blind Grit, if you type that in, should be the first. We should be the first thing that comes up. But it is just www.blindgrit.com. So noau.com. So if you look on there, and then there's links to our Instagram, which is run by the fabulous blind Debbie Larson. She is a superstar, and on the website there's and my LinkedIn profile, there's some great video footage of her, because she was interviewed by 9 News at last year's Melbourne Fashion Week when we were there. Yeah, so all those stories are there. That's where you can find not only the designs that I've created thus far, and I have to say there's been a huge pause on that this year, like there's been a huge pause, and sadly it was going to be Blind Grit's first collection, because I created some fashion before I came up with the business model and the idea of Blind Grit. Yeah, so there's more to come. Once the first collection is released, I think there'll be the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th.
Nice.
Because there's been a massive delay. Partly my choice, because I want to do it properly. It deserves to be done properly with all our fab Blind Grit team. That is what Blind Grit is about. I could selfishly go, ooh, I've created them all and here's some photos of it on me. But I want to do it the Blind Grit way. I want to do it properly. So I'm waiting. But it's, you know, there's been a lot of effort, love, energy put into it, so it's worth the wait. So that's where you'll find not only my designs, but also our awesome team and what Blind Grit is about. And so far as how did I get into fashion, when I was younger, as a teenager, that was, you know, everyone always has that kind of happy creative place they go to in their mind when they're daydreaming. It might be sport for some, dancing, writing, drawing, I don't know. For me, it was fashion design, just constantly designing fashion in my head. But I thought that was a really unpractical thing to pursue. So I just pursued more practical things. I was actually a masseuse for a really long time. And then I love public relations. I love the power of public relations. Unfortunately, I think 98% of it gets used to make already wealthy people even more wealthy. But there is awesome power in public relations, and I really, really love public relations. So I studied public relations and research. I love research, you know, the quality of the outcome. So long as it's a good motivation in the outcome, it can only be properly informed with good research. So I also did postgrad in qualitative and quantitative research.
Love it.
Yeah, I got it. I love good qualitative research. It's so right. It then, of course, has to be used well. It fascinates me. So I love all that stuff, and I work for the Australian Red Cross and the Australian Red Cross Blood Service. So I always had a really strong passion around, I guess, equity. I feel I'm absolutely driven by equity, and I found my mum did actually. She found a little note I wrote of my goals for growing up when I was 12 or something. And I didn't quite have the right jargon for it, but on there is essentially social justice and equity. It's also fashion design, and amusingly, being slightly, the word slightly or a little bit or something, a little bit famous for fashion design.
Nice. I love it.
It's so funny in my little dodgy handwriting, but I've always felt very driven by equity, inequality and injustice and unfairness. Inequity, social inequity breaks my heart. And to me, it is just a glaring no-brainer that the more equity, the better, individually, socially, you know, so that's what absolutely drives me. in life,
Yeah.
equality. And I guess fashion design is what is my happy creative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So Blind Grit was a very deliberate effort at putting those two things together after so it was after I lost my vision.
Okay.
And there had been not just in that period of time, but there had kind of been a building up of traumatic events throughout my childhood and young adulthood, and then things that happened in the breakdown of my marriage that left me in a situation after I lost my vision of being a legally blind single mum with these two divine little boys. They were only little, they were 1 and 3, who was socially isolated, struggling with the effects of post-traumatic stress, financially ruined. It was really hard. It was dark, it was heavy. I felt broken, lost myself in terms of lost all those kind of joyous light strengths. And yeah, so that's where it was born from, that place of I don't want to be here, but even more so, I don't want to be here with my children. So it was a very deliberate, I have no intention of raising these children as a broken, unconfident, unjoyous, heavy mum. Not who I was, and that was not what I was going to give them. It's not good. So it was that's where Blind Grit was born from. So it was quite an intuitive, in hindsight, reaching for that approach motivation that was strong enough to counteract that avoidance motivation. In hindsight, but it was quite intuitive at the time. So I reached for an aspiration, a goal, and that was fashion design for me. And Blind Grit is built around that. I won an ING Dream Starter scholarship for the business model of Blind Grit in 2017, I think.
Right.
Or I can't even remember. The years blend in a little bit. Because it's built around my strong belief that the combination of aspiration, validation, and motivation is really, really powerful in connecting with and releasing the incredible, again, power and potential in survival. And, you know, people who survive trauma and people who live with disability have that. So that's what Blind Grit is built about. That's where it comes from.
Wow, I love that. Absolutely love it. So when I guess when you're designing clothes, I know because like you've as you've spoken about, you've adapted to things just through life. Are there any particular, I guess, like gadgets or whatever that you need to utilize in the design process to assist you, or you just wing it?
Well, it's interesting because the journey of trying to create Blind Grit has taught me very strongly what that is. There wasn't to begin with, because there's a huge difference between designing clothes and the business of creating a fashion label.
Okay.
You know, designing clothes and even creating those clothes is one thing. Creating a sustainable business and a fashion label, that's a very different thing, a very business driven thing. And happily I love business and public relations and systems and business systems and all those things. I do really love that. There has been a ridiculous, people ask me all the time, what is the hardest thing about being a blind fashion designer?
I guess I'm curious about that too, yeah.
And honestly, the hardest thing, the thing that is most getting in my way, sorry, it's not necessarily the hardest thing, but the thing that is most getting in Blind Grit's way currently of steaming forward is the ridiculous difficulty in developing an ethical, sustainable, affordable manufacturing chain, preferably in Australia, but in general, I would like to do it in Australia. That would be great. And I mean, that is a massive whole other discussion that does my head in, because again, the power that the fashion industry holds in being able to create really great things in global society, you know, they are a huge employer, huge. And there is a lot of power there, and it's used not only very poorly, but on the whole, really abusively, you know. It's so annoying. It is so annoying. You know, there is still either outright slavery or stuff that's verging on slavery for 90% of that industry. And then the top percent that you see their faces, you know, the overpaid models and the overpaid public relations people and the overpaid, you know, those people at the top of the brand who just get paid to pay themselves and get paid a ridiculous amount. Anyway, as you can tell, there I go with my equity stuff again. But there is a lot of power in that, and it's not used well.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't want to be part of that.
No.
I have no desire in Blind Grit's manufacturing chain being part of that, and it's so difficult. So that is by far, from a business perspective, the thing that's getting in our way.
Yeah.
Currently. However, I guess the thing that would assist the most in moving forward there, because I can do pattern making. That's what I went back to TAFE to do when I decided I'm going to give this a go. I wanted to learn the skills to get the designs that I'm constantly having up here into actual clothes.
Yeah.
So, you know, and pattern making obviously is one of the absolute key ones there. So I can do it, but it's, again, it takes incredible, at the moment, unless you outsource it to somebody who's not necessarily terribly ethical overseas, because there's almost none of it here in Australia, and there's a bit of a monopoly with just one organisation, which I've found quite toxic.
So what do you mean there's not much of it here? What part are you talking about? Not here?
It's the sample making and the pattern making, and of course the manufacturing. But so the pattern making, the sample making, and then the manufacturing, because you can't just have cardboard patterns, because that's how you traditionally make a pattern, and that's how the person who does it here in Australia still does it. But then of course they have the software to turn it into electronic patterns and electronic detailed specifications are, you know, a millimeter fold here and this, you know, all the incredible detail, and you need all that done in a very precise electronic format, and then sized from that electronically for a manufacturer to work from it. That you can't just turn up with cardboard patterns, which is what my first collection was.
Right.
Created out of cardboard patterns, because that's the old-fashioned way of making.
Okay.
And it's really difficult for me. I'm very, very slow at it, and I got the help of a wonderful European tailor, an exquisite tailor who lived near me. I wanted to do it, but I wanted to do it with somebody for that first collection that I did. And so years ago, not Blind Grit's first collection, my first collection. But I can't do it myself, because just, you know, a millimeter here and there just makes a ridiculous difference when you're creating patterns to the way something sits or feels or whatever. So what I have discovered, and what I'm going to do moving forward, is some fabulous new technology that's been around a little while, but is now being more user-friendly for individuals rather than the massive, you know, it'll be what the manufacturers in China have been using for a long time, but fabulous technology that you can create the patterns in this computer platform. So you can zoom in and out So a millimetre, which is very difficult for me, can be zoomed out on the screen to like 30 centimetres if I want. And you can, you know, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
So so I'll be able to do the pattern making myself on there, and I'm so excited. Whereas that is something that I haven't been able to do purely visually with the old-fashioned way of cardboard. So you still have to know how to do pattern making, but you can do it on screen and you can zoom in and out. And also fabrics, I don't always see the I can't always tell which side is which unless there's a pattern on it. And you can send your fabrics into the people who create this software, and they can tell all sorts of awesome things that are crucial to me, like the stretch, how they wash, all these things. But they also can tell you if you've got the right side there, which I can't always see. And again, if I can put it on screen and zoom it in and out, I'll be able to see which side is the right side. I just can't, because I've got no depth perception. I don't always see that.
Right.
If there's no pattern on it. Obviously, if there's a pattern on one side, it's pretty obvious to me. But if it's monocolor, and there's not a really distinct different text visual difference on one side, then I don't always know which side is which. Sometimes I can feel it, sometimes I can't. And sometimes I use fabrics inside out purposely, because that's just how I like the feel of it. On how it sits on your body. And people go, it's the wrong way round. I don't care. It feels nice this way.
that always throws me, because I mean, I'm used to things being like, I've got OCD, so I'm used to things being a particular way. And and then I'll go and I remember, like, one of my favorite stores, Esprit's, not in Australia anymore. I used to buy,
is it not?
No, they closed, like, they put out of Australia. And I literally, my wardrobe used to be Esprit everything. And now when I think about it, like, they probably would have used the they had very their stitching was very fine, so I'm sure they probably did offshore stuff. But
they all do. They all do.
Yeah.
And you look into it, and actually, surprisingly, and sorry, that's a dreadful interruption.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Because they have, all sorts of ratings for ethical, sustainable manufacturing. I mean, you have to take their word for it that they're doing the right thing to tick those correct boxes. But incredibly, it tends to not be the ones that you think, as in the Cotton On group, which I just always presumed would be one of the worst offenders. They won an award because they're the only ones in Australia with the #1 ranking for, I mean, they add to the fast fashion dreadful movement, and there's a lot of discarded landfill fashion from Cotton On. However, the actual creating of the garments, they do well. And, some of the most expensive brands are the most guilty. And when you trace back what brands use what, so many of them all come from the very same factory in China, but of course charge very different, place themselves in the market as in very different places and charge very different amounts. And so many of them come from the same, very same factories. But anyway.
I was just like, going back to Esprit, I was thinking, like, I had a jumper, and I've still got the jumper in my wardrobe, and honestly, I don't wear it that much because it does my head in, because it's got these line on the outside that looks like it should be on the inside where it's all joined. It does my head in. So I find it really hard to wear those things that in my mind, they're just like, no, that's not right. But
just not right, doesn't fit.
Yeah, often, but obviously it's a fashion statement and it's meant to be that way. So it's that's just an interesting.
That is really interesting, Ainslee. Yeah, because I don't necessarily think of that, because people ask me all the time, when they find out I'm Australia's first blind designer, there's a presumption that I create clothes for people who live with disability.
Yes.
So, you know, not
Yeah.
that I just plain create clothes.
No, it's
and
got to be for
I
yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't create inclusive clothing. I'm very, very guilty of not creating inclusive clothing. I create things that need fiddly bows doing up, and that's not, but there's a presumption that I do. I'm sure I'll get better at that along the line. But one of the wonderful things that I get very excited about in this software that will help me do my own pattern making, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
One that I'm looking at also has really good 3D rendering, and you can put the person in different positions and you can change measurements and do all sorts of things. So you create your design using the online pattern making stuff. You send them your fabric, and then they're able to program your own fabric in, so they can show you how it drapes and sits. It's very clever and looks. So you can create a little, you know, there's a little person that you can create and put your garment on and look at it in a 3D manner. But the fabulous thing is you can then sit it down, so you can see how it looks, feels, sits for someone in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And also, you know, you can create it so as for people, you can individualize it. So if you are someone who has a limb that's been amputated here, you can create it specifically for them, not so they just buy something and cut it there, and you know, so they people can look at people will be able to look at my designs and say, I really like that one, and then put in their measurements, you know, so people of short stature or people of just whatever your body looks like and however you use your body, you'll be able to put that in, and then this will be able to turn the pattern into something specifically for you.
That's fascinating, because I mean, there's so
very
many
cool,
times,
isn't it?
It is.
I'm
like,
so excited.
So many times, like I've actually, I mean, there's the issue with me being in the wheelchair that I can't get into change rooms. So so I'd have to go to the shop, buy the product, go home, try it on, didn't work, go back, exchange it. You know, so I got to a point where I just went, okay, this brand works for me, this brand works for me. I'm not going to buy anything else other than these two brands, because I knew they work for me. But yeah, like, you know, I'd see so many beautiful tops in stores, and I'd be like, oh, that looks really good, that I'd put it on myself. And because I've got a short torso, so it's like, you know, I've got like this short torso, wide torso, and so I put it on me, and it's just like, oh, that just looks absolutely shocking. So yeah, to be able to have something like that would just be absolutely awesome.
It's exciting, isn't it? And I've been saying I don't know if you've heard of wonderful Carol Taylor, who is actually a world's first quadriplegic fashion designer.
Wow.
Not just Australia's. She lives in Brisbane. And just, you know, I've been talking to her for a while now, and even before I was talking to her, getting excited, trying to work out, and I wanted to connect with TAFE, because I just knew that the technology would be out there to do this. And I wanted to actually work in with TAFE to get a manufacturing, sample making, pattern making, manufacturing chain linked up through TAFE, in the same way they have their business models for their beauticians and their mechanics and their restaurants and things. You know, when their students are at a particular level, they then actually do work for clients, with clients, and it's a business model for TAFE, and it just connects the students to industry so well. It's fabulous. I love TAFE, massive fan of TAFE. I feel very strongly that TAFE has wonderful potential in working very well and very strongly with the disability community too. I'm a fan of TAFE. So I was very excited about, because I knew that TAFE had some of that technology, but not used in fashion design or pattern making necessarily, used in other areas. And I thought TAFE would just be a one-stop shop for this, perfect, because they can bring that technology in and apply it to that. Yeah, because we have been using the same, you know, size 6, 8, 10, 12, you know, size extra small, whatever, you know, with the presumption that everyone looks like this.
Yeah.
for forever. And just, you know, I get impatient sometimes. I just think, oh my God, you know, I know there's a way of doing this.
Yeah.
Why are we still using this when I barely know anybody who looks like the standard version of size 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Like, people just don't, that's not how bodies are.
No, not at all.
But we still design, manufacture and sell everything, all our clothing on that model.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. So I'm very excited about this new, I'm going to study it next year, because being blind, I think I can see when I'm in familiar situations. It's amazing what the brain fills in. So I can certainly use computers, and I can use things that I've already learned. And as soon as it's something I don't know, I think, oh my God, I am blind. I cannot see. So I'm going to go back to Fabulous TAFE and get someone to help me learn the actual software. But it doesn't start till next year. I'm so excited.
I can't wait to, like, it'd be great to see what it all looks like. It just, So when do you think, I mean, obviously I'm just really excited about this. So you go to TAFE next year and study it. So when do you think you'll actually be able to implement it all into your business?
Oh, well, hopefully it'll be pretty quick, because I guess I'd like to just use the first collection, and I'll have the second collection stuff ready to program in there too by then for sure. And it'll be just so much quicker and smoother. And I mean, it depends on my tech is not my fave. I'm a bit of a technological moron.
Okay.
It takes me a little while to learn it. So I just don't, I don't know, but I guess I do know how to do pattern making. I do know fabrics and draping, and I guess all that other knowledge that can take an awful long while to acquire. I've got it there. So I guess it will just be a matter of how long it takes me to use the. I mean, I think the course for doing it is like 1.5 years or something. Right. But I just want to. I just want to gobble it all up, learn it all. I just want to know how to do it, and so I don't rightly know.
No.
And I mean, the first collection is actually ready to release. I was just waiting on getting it photographed the way I want it photographed, because of course the whole point of Blind Grit is almost the rebranding of those who live outside their comfort zone 24/7, those who live with disability, those who survive trauma. And the fabulous Unilever and the T2 arm of Unilever, the Delicious Yummy Teas, in Melbourne, their wonderful team has offered to work with Blind Grit to photograph the first collection with us.
Oh, great.
Because that's the kind of thing I want for Blind Grit. Because, you know, it's hard to get the qualifications, experience, and the actual resources, like the programming, the cameras, you know, so I just love that. I just can't get enough of that lovely combining of energy as well. So that, you know, the fabulous, highly skilled, wonderful professionals at T2, Unilever's T2, are going to work with us for the photo shoot and then the graphic design that goes afterwards. So they're going to work with our models, our hair, our makeup, our styling, our garments, our photographers, our social media, and then post our graphic designers. So, you know, and that's a very type of opportunities that are really important for me for our blind. I call them Blind Grit Angels. Our Blind Grit Angels, as in Victoria's Secret angels, but
yes,
better looking.
Oh, I can't wait to see it all. It's going to be amazing.
So I can't wait, and we were starting to talk dates right before the second lockdown of Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I might initially release the first collection just in a slightly different way and then work with Unilever for the second one yet, or not, because I don't want to put it off too long, because I'm excited and because people are waiting. So I'm not sure. I've got a couple of things going on in my head that I might do in the interim, because I certainly don't want to put anyone at risk. It might be an almost indefinite, it might be another year or 18 months before some of the people that I want to model and some of the people that I want to do the hair and makeup, some of our blind grit angels can gather. And you need them together. Like they need to be together.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
So it might be unrealistic for me to be waiting on that to happen the way I want it to happen at this stage.
Yeah. So are you located in Melbourne, or where are you located?
No, I'm in Albury Wodonga, amusingly.
Oh, okay.
So I shouldn't say amusingly. It's been quite the COVID experience being in Albury Wodonga, because I'm in Albury. We're in Albury.
Yes.
And that's on the New South Wales side.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, I'm like a 15-minute bike ride away from Victoria.
Wow.
So and my son goes to school in Victoria.
Wow.
So it's been really funny that, because there's been an extreme difference in the COVID situation between little old Albury and little old Wodonga, who are they're the border town together. They're essentially one town. But and we've just had busloads of police. I've never seen so many police and army people here, because they've got to man the border 24/7.
Okay, so obviously you've been doing homeschooling, but your son goes to school in Victoria.
Yeah, and I have to say, I wouldn't call it homeschooling. It's interesting to me how people have been talking about homeschooling during the COVID pandemic, and that was never really what anyone was asked to do or expected to do. They were asked to either do remote learning or just have your kids at home. No one was actually asked to do homeschooling. I just say this because I homeschooled my children for the majority of their schooling, not all of it, but the majority.
Right.
And it's different, but I certainly empathise with, and I guess I built Blind Grit. I built Blind Grit homeschooling my children, and I'm a single mum. So trust me, I empathise with the trying to work from home with your children. But it is, But Darcy, this week, they were supposed to go back to school in Victoria, or they did go back to school in Victoria, but not on campus.
Okay.
So this week he did one last week of remote learning. But my boys have been doing really well. It's been all right for them because they're kind of used to doing learning from home. But I can't say I've been homeschooling them this year, because I haven't.
No,
it's not me who's been teaching them.
Yeah, because I don't have any children. I've got my dog Sheldon. But so for me, I've been watching people and it's been really sad, like watching people on social media getting distraught about it, like as if they're failing something. And it's like, well, we're in a situation we've never faced before. And I hated seeing all this pressure that people are putting on themselves.
It was incredible, wasn't it? And I tried to do a tiny bit of speaking out and sharing some stuff on social media around it's okay.
Yeah.
Because the pressure we put, the reliance we have on ingrained systems, not just the education system, but all systems. That when the kids could not go to a standardized school in the standardized way, that there was this massive fear and pressure that the parents felt. And I can understand that. And when I first took on homeschooling, because my boys had been to standard school,
right,
you know, I didn't start them homeschooling. They'd been to standard school. And when I first took it on, I was just, like the level of responsibility I felt and worry that I couldn't do it. So I can relate, because we are very ingrained that the systems that are there are the best way, the only way that's going to work. And just, you know, trying to impart to parents that it's okay. And if your child did not do a single bit of organised maths or English learning for 12 months or even bloody 3 years, it'll be okay. Like just that fear of
not going to be the end of the world.
They need to be in the system. They need to be in the system. Because, and that it's all right. I mean, and I guess also that thing of you just try and stop your child learning. I challenge you to stop your child learning. They won't stop learning.
Exactly.
It'll be different to what they might be learning, but it might be better.
Yeah.
It might be so much better what they learn.
Well, that's
and just relax. Let them play and chill out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
and
those
just
parents.
That fear and responsibility. Yeah, I broke my heart watching it.
Yeah.
Watching it too.
It's like watching.
And the sad.
Yeah.
So the sad lack of faith that parents had in their ability to just.
Yes.
To teach. Not to teach, to just connect and parent, and the parents have so much to offer their children. It's not just the academic standardized school system that has that to offer. You know, that's sad. I can't do it. I don't know how to give the value to my children. And you do. You do know how to give the value to your kids. But anyway, so I'm interrupting.
No, that's okay. But it's just, it's like, I mean, like for myself, like when I was in school, I had heaps of time off because I had, you know, hospital and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I had like a whole term off, and okay, I didn't do great in high school, but it turns out it wasn't necessarily because of that, you know. So, you know, it wasn't because I had time off that I didn't do well. It turned out to be, in hindsight, the way I was educated, that just wasn't right for me. But yeah, so it's like, you know, and it's not like that someone's going to come knocking on their door and saying, you know, you didn't do well, therefore, you know, you're going to be penalized in some way. So yeah, to see all this kind of stress, it did my head in. But like, even talking about that, this morning I watched with my partner on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that documentary?
I watched that with my children.
Oh my gosh,
last week.
Oh, it was just heart-wrenching. Like, for me, the thing that got me at the start was about the filters, like the Snapchat filters, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And now children or teenagers or whatever are going to get plastic surgery so they can look like these filters. It just, I don't know. It's just, society is just, there's been so much more external pressure, I think, put on people from the outside.
And again, to me, this is very strongly linked in with equity, because our children are being sold. Again, I feel so strongly about this, and watching The Social Dilemma was nothing but validation to me and a catch up, thinking, duh. You know, what did you all think was happening?
Yeah.
And I loved it, and my boys loved it too, that right at the start it says, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product.
Yes.
You know, I mean, duh, what did these people think? And the willingness of parents to sell their kids out. Well, and I shouldn't say willing, and again, there is no money in being satisfied with yourself. You know?
Yes, that's very true. Yeah.
And the lack of equity in that, I know we are all increasingly being used as just money-making machines for a very wealthy few. And it's certainly not the technology that's the problem. It's what it's programmed to do. It is programmed. And again, I mean, talking to you, because I've had the privilege of talking to you and with you in other settings, Ainslee, and that passion around where value sits in society, and to aim it solely at money, which is just such an archaic, like, odd thing to value yourself on. I used to talk to my boys about, imagine if you know, if there were aliens in the traditional way that we think of aliens and they came down to Earth, I think they would be blown away at this. Why are they putting all their value on this thing? It used to be pieces of paper, and now it's not even that. It's just digits on a screen.
Yeah.
Why is all their power and value tied up in this? And the incredible technology that we've created is geared towards the almighty dollar that is controlled by very few who control the politics, who control the, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I've been able to see this. My children never been allowed to use social media, but not just, also not just the, no, you can't use it. Ever since they were tiny and new, I would explain why.
Okay.
Yep. This is what it's about.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it so beautifully as that quote, if, you know, if you don't have to pay for the product, you're the product. It's such a great quote. But I have explained that concept to them ever since they were tiny and explained, you know, so an awareness is what you need. It's not that we need to stop using it. It's not that it's evil, but you need to know. And again, there is no money in having people be aware. There is no money in having people know. There is no money in having people understand, because there's certainly no money in people having control over their own thoughts and actions.
Absolutely.
This is, like, to me, the ultimate inequity. Like, I just...
Yeah, I mean, I got quite emotional after watching it, and my partner, he works in IT, so he's like, well, you know, you realize that this is how it is, and it's like, well, I do, but seeing it all sort of thrown like that, it was just it was interesting. So it be, and I said as well, it'd be interesting to see another documentary come out that sort of I guess opposes that, because yes, it was interesting, but as my partner did say, it was very one-sided in that, like, there was dramatic scenes in between and dramatic music, and so therefore to have something opposing it, to see like a healthy debate, that would be interesting. But yeah, it's I'm with
you there, and your partner. But I guess the thing is, humans tend to need shock.
Yes, absolutely, and that's
it
exactly
needs
what
rebalancing.
Yes,
it needs rebalancing, and humans. And I think
agree.
we're getting more, again, anthropologically, you'd have more insight into this than me, but we are creating a society that more and more needs to be shocked. And that horrible thing, because I talk to my kids about outrage. You know, the way they play with outrage in humans just infuriates me. There's nothing wrong with being outraged about something, I guess, but know what it is for starters. And be outraged in a way that you then do something, not out, because all they're doing with the outrage is tapping into a super powerful emotion that they can make money out of. You know, and I think we're getting more, you know, we need to be more and more triggered, more and more outraged in order to even bother taking notice.
And I think that's like, if I look at the news headlines, and I've been avoiding them with COVID, because I've got family overseas at the moment. So
oh God, Ainslee.
So I talk to them, make sure they're all good, and it's just ignore the sensationalisms or whatever that's going on. But the headlines, it's all about creating this uproar and not giving people information to actually do something like productive with. It's just all, let's all get people pitchforks and
that's right, outrage culture. It's awful.
No, so that was a very interesting morning watching that documentary.
Oh, it's really I really like it. And I couldn't care less if there's no balanced counter argument.
It was a very
the counter argument is going on in a powerful way all day, every day in society.
And I think
I don't need the counter argument.
No, and I think the fact that they had those people from Twitter, Facebook.
Oh, it was so good, wasn't it? I loved that it came from the very people who created it.
And now that, and even like hearing that they don't allow their children to have social
Yes.
media, that was,
Why would you? It's like a drug dealer giving their kids
yeah.
cocaine.
And so
Or
like,
drug dealers taking cocaine. They don't take it either. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? I loved it. Yeah.
So to hear them say that, it was very, very powerful, and yeah, it was fascinating. So look, I just wanted to ask
and
you.
I use it.
Yeah.
I use it. It's obviously going to be,
that's it.
I use it all the time in fashion. It's so strong in fashion.
And that's, I mean, this podcast is all like powered by social
Absolutely.
media.
We're using it as we speak. And that's what I mean. It's not the technology. It's like dividing the atom isn't a bad thing. Yeah. It's not the technology. It's that there is, follow the money trail.
The emotive part of me,
and it devalues everything else except for what makes money for the people who are already wealthy. Yes, that's not the technology. And I would like to think that we are using the incredible technology to help people think good things or help them think through good things, or
well, there was a
mighty power. That's why I like public relations. And of course, the social media is a huge part of public relations. It's just communicating, and it would be best for it to be communicating and opening minds, not communicating and closing minds. I think that's what the problem is.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's the way it's all geared is sort of like, trying to provide people with information so that they don't think, and then they don't go look elsewhere. I mean, some do, but that's just my opinion anyway. But like there was a good book that I think I mentioned to you the other day, and to a few others. It's called, there's a series by an anthropologist, Daniel Miller, called Why We Post. And it's fascinating. It's about social media, why we post on social media, and how it talks about different cultures and different cultures' use of social media. So it's not about social media being one thing and used in one particular way. It's how we use it. And so that's a really good example of how it can be used for. There are some great examples in there how it's used for good. I mean, being able to connect with family, especially when they're overseas, that's an amazing thing. So yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because I ask every guest that I have on my podcast, is the 10 things that they'd like people to know about disability. Not every guest has 10 things. So I just wanted to see what you want people to know about disability.
Yeah, and I've got 3 things. I'm sure I could come up with 10,010 for you, but I just distilled it down to 3. And I wrote them down because I think, distill them down and then forget. But I guess my top 3 things that I would like people to know about disability are that I think, I believe that people who live with disability are inherently good, inclusive thinkers, in terms of, they have a lived experience of how it feels, its implications, what it looks like for themselves and others, what it's like both from an individual and social perspective. So with the desire for society to go forward in a more inclusive manner, there is such a value add there for government, for corporations, just for society in general, to have those who live with disability at decision-making tables, because it's not necessarily something you can fake or get your head around. So that's one of them. The second is, I also along the same lines, think people who live with disability are inherently good humanistic thinkers, in terms of being very in touch with what it means to be human. So again, and this is very, very good in terms of what we're just speaking about, Ainslee, because we are living in an increasingly automated world
Mm-hmm.
and technological world. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing in and of itself. And I get very excited about the wonderful power and potential that combined with wonderful humanistic thinking has. But I mean, there is no doubt that our future is increasingly automated and technological. That's just going to be how it is. And I guess there's a choice of if we combine that strongly with humanistic thoughts and processes. And I think, again, having those who live with disability at the decision-making tables and the innovation hubs just has really powerful and, to me, hugely important potential there. And my third one is, again, those with a lived experience of disability, and I include mental health in that as well, have, they're experts at discomfort. And this is actually the kind of the whole premise, I guess, that Blind Grit is built on as well. You cannot grow, improve, get better at anything unless you push out of your comfort zone. You can't grow emotionally, mentally, physically, academically. You just can't unless you're pushed out of your comfort zone. In fact, if you're not pushed out of your comfort zone, you atrophize. Have I said that correctly? I think I have.
I understand what you mean. Absolutely. Yeah.
If you don't use your muscles, they shrink.
Yeah, atrophies. Yeah.
And that is the same emotionally, mentally, academically, socially, so it's impossible to grow, be stronger in any way at all unless you push out of your comfort zone. And those who live with disability are living it 24/7. And again, that's what Blind Grit is all about. So there is just, again, there's your value add for sitting at your corporate tables, your government tables, anywhere where there's decision innovation happening. So they're my top three that I'd like to communicate. Yeah,
I love those, and especially like how you've ended with that's what Blind Grit's all about. That's a fabulous ending. So look, I wanted to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today. So you said there was your website blindgrit.com, is that right?
Yep, blindgrit.com.
And what about any social media accounts people could follow?
Yes, please do. And in particular, please get on Instagram. I have to say we don't have as exciting things as we will in the future yet because we haven't launched the first collection. But make Debbie's day, week and month if you go and follow us on Instagram. So please do. I think it's just Blind Grit. You'd think I'd know, wouldn't you? If you go to our website, our Instagram things to click on down the bottom, but get on in there and follow us on Instagram because it shan't be long before we have all sorts. I mean, we've got good stuff on there anyway that Debbie's put on there. But there'll be then you'll be following us for when we release the first collection, which will be very cool.
Very exciting. Any other social medias that you use, or is Instagram the main one?
Yeah, actually, I'd also like to say if some more people can subscribe to our YouTube channel, that'd be great. I've got no idea what it's called because currently it's got the fabulous catchy title of, www.youtube.z.
That's all
question mark, but because apparently you have to have 100 subscribers before you can name it. And I want to be able to name it Blind Grit.
Yeah, that's
currently we've got, I think, 63 subscribers. But again, if you go to the website, I'll double check that.
I'll later
go on Instagram. If you go on the website, go on Instagram.
Yeah,
there's links there to some of the videos we've got on YouTube. So if we can have another 30 odd subscribers on YouTube, that'd be really, really nice.
Sure.
And we also there's also there's some interviews with some of our original initial Blind Grit angels on there too. yeah, again, we'll have more exciting things on there as we go forward once I finally launch the first collection. But yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That'd be fab. So I can actually name it Blind Grit, and then I can find it myself.
Yeah, awesome.
As well as other people finding it. And yeah, please do subscribe and tell Debbie how fab she is as well, to follow us rather on Insta. I'm also on LinkedIn, and we've got I'm not much of a Twitterer, but I do have Twitter. Yeah, I'm a bit of a my favour LinkedIn and YouTube, actually. And we do have a Facebook page. Yep. I mean, join us on Facebook too. We got all sorts of things going on, and you'll make Debbie's day by engaging with us on social media.
Awesome. What I'll do is I'll pop the links in the comments of this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Ainslee.
No, not a problem at all. So thank you again for joining me today, and thank you everybody for listening and for watching. This podcast will be available on Podbean, where it's hosted. You'll also find us on YouTube, where it'll be captioned for people who need to read captions. And it's on Facebook at Ainslee Hooper Consulting, Facebook, LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And I think that's it. So thank you again. And if anybody has any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you've liked this, please subscribe and follow, and please follow Nikki. And yes, share this podcast. And hopefully, if you have any people that you'd like to see on the podcast or hear on the podcast, please let us know and join us for the next week's podcast, which will be dropping on Monday. So thank you very much. Okay, bye everyone. Bye, Nikki.
Bye, thank you.